Picture this: a perfectly manicured lawn, a charming neighborhood, and then a shocking revelation: a resort built on your land, all hidden behind a veil of legal loopholes. This is my story. My name is Melissa, and for as long as I can remember, my family's land was more than just soil and trees. It was a living legacy. Passed down through 3 generations, our patch of earth was where my grandmother taught me to bake pies, where my father built our childhood treehouse, and where I carved out the beginnings of my dreams. But one summer morning, everything changed. It started with a simple, unassuming envelope in my mailbox. The paper was crisp and official, but the message inside sent a chill down my spine. The letter, stamped by our local homeowners association, HOA, declared that my back acre was now common property, reclassified without my knowledge, and earmarked for a new luxury resort project. According to the document, a professional survey had rendered my grandfather's lovingly hand-drawn maps incorrect. My heart pounded as I reread the words. How could they simply erase generations of memories and legal rights with a single signature from a board that met behind closed doors? I knew I couldn't let them get away with this, not without a fight. The next day, I marched straight to the stately house of the HOA president, Eleanor Winters. Eleanor was a picture of poise, with a garden so meticulously manicured it could have been featured in a magazine. As I knocked on her door, I rehearsed every word I'd say. When the door swung open, there she was, wearing her trademark workout gear, a forced smile on her face that did little to hide the irritation in her eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone clipped. Holding the letter firmly in my hand, I said, "Eleanor, this letter says you're taking my land. There must be some mistake." Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she replied, "There's no mistake, Melissa. Our professional survey shows that your grandfather's maps were outdated. The board voted unanimously last night, and our bylaws don't require us to notify you of such corrections." I felt a surge of anger, mixed with disbelief. Outdated? This land has been in my family for over 50 years. How could a piece of paper written decades ago suddenly become invalid? Before she could answer, I heard the faint sound of music drifting from next door. Eleanor's expression flickered, and she quickly mentioned that Tyler and Samantha, our neighbors, were hosting a welcome party. I sensed there was more to the story. Something wasn't adding up. That night, the music from the party next door echoed through my window as I lay awake, unable to sleep. I couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA's move was too well orchestrated. The very next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I knocked on Tyler's door. His face turned a shade of red as he answered, beer in hand. "Melissa, it's late. What's up?" I gently confronted him about the party and the suspicious placement of their new pool, built dangerously close to the boundary of my land. After a hesitant exchange, it became clear that Tyler and Samantha had known about the HOA's plans long before I did. They even seemed to have cooperated in ways I hadn't anticipated. Their silence hinted at something deeper, perhaps collusion. I took a deep breath and returned home. That's when I decided to revisit my grandfather's old deed. Flipping through yellowed pages of faded ink, I discovered a tiny, almost overlooked note, a reference to county survey markers from 1952. My heart skipped a beat. Could these markers prove that the land rightfully belonged to my family? Determined to get to the bottom of this, I reached out to James Jacobson, an experienced surveyor who had worked with my father many years ago. He agreed to meet me that very afternoon. With his professional equipment in tow, we set out to locate the original markers that might just turn the tables in my favor. As we combed through the property, we discovered that the HOA's new survey had completely ignored these markers. I remember my grandfather's stories about finding Native American artifacts on the land, relics of a time when the area was sacred. And as fate would have it, just beyond the old oak tree, we uncovered a cluster of ancient arrowheads and pottery fragments. This wasn't just an ordinary plot of land anymore. It was a site of historical significance. Later that day, I met with Rose Thompson, my 80-year-old neighbor, who had an encyclopedic knowledge of local history. Over cups of lukewarm tea in her cozy kitchen, she confirmed that these artifacts had been documented decades ago by local archaeologists. "Melissa, she said gently. This land means more than property value. It holds our history. If these artifacts are verified, no development can proceed. It's a preservation law. Armed with this new evidence, my resolve grew. I compiled photographs, the original deed, and detailed notes on the survey markers. But I wasn't done yet. I knew that if the HOA was going to proceed with their plan, they'd try to silence any opposition. A few days later, around 4:30 a.m., my worst fears materialized. I woke to the sound of a massive bulldozer rumbling onto my property. Heart pounding, I rushed outside, clutching the official documents and my phone. I shouted for the machine to stop, waving my phone as if it were a shield. The operator, barely registering my warning, continued pushing forward. I quickly dialed Sheriff Davis, a family friend known for his fairness and steadfastness. Within minutes, flashing lights and the sound of a siren cut through the early morning haze. The bulldozer halted, and the machine's driver, along with a couple of other HOA-associated individuals, looked uneasy. Eleanor appeared on the scene, holding a leather portfolio and a document that she claimed proved her right to the land. "Melissa," she said in a tone that bordered on condescension, "you're trespassing on what is now common property. According to our survey, this land falls within community boundaries." I calmly countered by handing over copies of the original deed, the 1952 survey markers, and photographs of the artifacts. "Eleanor, this isn't just about property lines. It's about protecting our heritage. My land isn't for sale or for development, and no one has the right to take it away without a fight." The standoff lasted only a few tense moments before Sheriff Davis intervened. He assured everyone that the situation would be reviewed legally and advised that the HOA cease all activities until proper investigation. I could see the frustration in Eleanor's eyes as she realized the tide might be turning. That very evening, word spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. It turned out that several residents had long suspected the HOA of overreaching its authority, and many had witnessed questionable behavior during previous board meetings. A community uprising was brewing, fueled by whispered conversations and furtive glances exchanged at block parties. Neighbors began sharing evidence, some even revealing emails that hinted at a larger, more sinister plan. Eleanor and her associates were orchestrating a commercial development scheme designed to seize valuable land under the guise of community improvement. The final confrontation came during an emergency HOA board meeting held at the local community center. The atmosphere was electric as I stepped up to address the crowd. With copies of the survey, the deed, and newly uncovered internal emails projected on a screen, I laid out every piece of evidence I'd gathered. I explained how the original markers and historical artifacts had not only proven my family's legal claim, but also placed a historical preservation status on the property, effectively halting any development. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. One board member, Diana, spoke up in a clear, unwavering voice. "This is outrageous. We're supposed to be a community that protects its members, not one that exploits them for profit." The dissent grew louder as more neighbors voiced their support. Even some longtime supporters of the HOA began to question the validity of the board's actions. Eleanor tried to salvage the situation, but as the evidence mounted, her composed facade began to crumble. In a final, desperate move, she offered a reasonable compromise: drop all claims to the land in exchange for forgiving certain minor violations, an offer that, in all honesty, would have cost the community dearly. I couldn't help but laugh at the audacity of it all. "Eleanor," I said firmly, "you really thought you could bait us with such a bargain? My family's legacy isn't for sale, and neither is our community's trust." As the meeting reached its climax, it became clear that the majority of the board and the community stood with me. The motion to halt the resort development passed overwhelmingly.